Season 11 has arrived, and I am excited for you to meet this season's guests. We are going all around the world to bring you the value and advice you need to succeed. Entrepreneurship, it's an exciting roller coaster that I get to ride on each day. Through its ups and downs, there are learning lessons after learning lessons, and in today's show, you will learn many things, including how to stick out against your competition, thrive in your field for over 25 years and stay a main competitor, how to gain celebrity clientele, how to manage your employees, and so much more. Welcome back to That Entrepreneur Show, where you get to hear these firsthand testimonials. My name is Vincent A. Lancy, and I am your host. If you are new to the show, I have the opportunity to sit down with a different founder of a company for each show from all around the world to share their advice for you, what worked well, what didn't work well, and more importantly, how you can thrive. Before I bring on today's guest, we are going to learn how he podcasts. Steven, which platform do you stream your podcasts through?
Apple.
I'm an Apple guy too.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you listen to your shows?
I listen to mostly driving in to work every day. So that could be anywhere from 30 minutes to sometimes 2 hours. So usually I listen to my podcast going in, going out. Or what I do is I take a brisk walk sometimes in between patients, put on my earbuds and do my little lap and listen to it while I just kind of get rid of the stresses, the normal stresses of having one's own business.
I can definitely relate with taking a walk as a break. I do that several times a day. Sometimes I think it is the best outlet for me. But I would also love to hear how you all listen to your podcast. Email me info@vincentalancy.com and I will feature you on a show. But for your tuning in, whether you are looking to start or scale your business, this is the show for you. And my guest on the show today is someone who I connected with because of my friend Paige in college. Eventually, I got close with her parents as we became close friends. We just went to the wedding recently, and it was a great time. But his wife, Deb, and his partner was on this show back on episode 32 of the first season. So there's a lot to catch up with on that business. Today's guest is the co-founder of Glassman Dental Care in the Upper West Side, Manhattan, New York. He is a leading cosmetic dentist who makes life-changing dental makeovers. When you have a radiant, beautiful smile, you have the confidence to be your best, whether it is in a job interview, blind date, or social gathering. Just because you weren't genetically gifted with perfect teeth does not mean you have to settle for anything less than your ideal smile. They do that much and more at their dental care, and we're going to learn about behind the scenes now. Allow me to now bring on Dr. Steven Glassman. Steven, thank you so much for your time and coming on the show.
Thank you, Vinny. Great to be here. Great to see what progress you've made with your career. You know, I've seen since your Paige's friend. I know you since college days. It's great to see how you guys have all developed and moving in your own area of expertise and your success.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Would you mind now please taking the time to give our audience a brief introduction of who you are, and then we'll hop into the entrepreneurial side.
In any big city, again, there are competitive businesses everywhere. And the dental world is no different. But in Manhattan, there are dentists everywhere. So we're practicing, believe it or not, I'm doing this for 37, my own business for 31 years. We came out with student loans, money from parents and banks, opened a practice from scratch in one of the most competitive areas. And we have become cutting edge throughout and well respected by our peers and patients throughout, people who fly in from out of the country, as well as you mentioned before, celebrities. And it wasn't always that way. You know, we're not afraid to take risks and chances and do things a little bit differently.
Absolutely. You mentioned it wasn't always like that. Let's date back to the beginning when you were first starting this practice. What led you actually to start a practice? Was that something you always wanted to do?
I liked the area of dental field because it was in medicine. I also had a motivator, somebody, a mentor in the area that I looked up. He was well respected community. He seemed to have a passion for what he did. His patients came out with and this is way before cosmetic dentistry, with just a great appreciation of their overall health. So he led me in the area. And then going into school where I met Deb. So that's another great thing. I
Oh,
met
you
my
went to
future
okay.
partner in dental school. And then coming out, we both had different jobs, working for different practices. I remember one day when I first got out, I had to work in a Medicaid insurance practice on the Jersey Shore. And I remember I had to rent a car, drive 2 hours, and what I would get paid for the day was less than what I had to pay for the car rental. So I definitely earned the right through all those things, but it made me learn about the different industry. It made me work harder and get smarter. The developing the practice that we dreamed of would be something that would be totally fee for service, very service oriented. And then early on, we went from things like laser dentistry, actually, was one of the first things we did, which was a big risk. And when we started doing that, a lot of our colleagues were saying, this is crazy, it's experimental. And yet now it's being used all over. And then the cosmetic dentistry, we started going and getting involved with that, and then learning to market ourselves to really showcase our skills with photography. And way back when the internet was just starting, this is before social media. We were one of the first dentists that would develop a web presence that people were coming to us. And then it seemed to be, we were always kind of on the right edge of things. We got involved in 2002 with Invisalign, a line technology, which you see behind me. And back then, there were, believe it or not, only 100 users in all of North America.
Wow.
The company was just starting out. Again, orthodontics, other dentists would call me up. What the hell are you doing? This is not state-of-the-art technologies. This is experimental. This is never going to last. Meanwhile, in 2021, Invisalign is a multinational company, Align Technology, worth $35 billion. So for those of you, it's like getting on the front of Apple and Tesla. And maybe it was luck, maybe I had a vision, but we were able always to kind of get in the area before everybody else did.
I love what you said. A lot of things there. You talked on marketing, but really ahead of the curve. You were ahead of the curve with laser because you took a risk. You saw what your future, you envisioned your brand. You saw the practice you wanted to create, and you took the risk to get there. It's a great lesson for everyone listening on. Sometimes you have to step outside the norm to create something that's exceptional. Their practice is now renowned and in business for a while. But you also touched on before the internet. I'd love to quickly stop here and ask, what was your main marketing efforts pre-internet?
So I'll tell you the first celebrity that we got. And again, you're a different generation, and I'm trying to think what today's equivalent would be to this guy. And I asked my manager, and she's about your age, and she said, who is the male lead guy? Now, TV is not what it was back then.
Agreed.
Because now you have the streaming service, whatever. But he said the closest one that she could think of would be Chris Helmsworth. Okay, Chris Helmsworth, Thor is in the movies, and he's regarded as a sex symbol and whatever. So we had back then done a mailing for new patients. So direct mail was the way we marketed. We had nothing. And what did we do? We back then, just to tell you the dumb, cleaning, X-rays, exam, $39, direct mail, please. So we got a guy that came in and he called and goes, I want the best deal in town. He comes in and we give him the treatment. When you have nothing but your time, you give above and beyond. And that's my message to a lot of young people out there. The level of service has to be, committed to it, because that one patient customer could be somebody that will refer or influence. Today, influence, the way things are today, they influence so much more people than they did then. But we wanted, even in his case, so he came in, he had a great experience, and we looked at his address, and he's in some fancy apartment on the Central Park West. And he said to me, my wife and I are relocating. His name was something the third, just to give you an idea. So sounded where his address and the way he carried himself as a very wealthy guy, which is another lesson, is even the wealthy are looking for deals. And he said, I'm going to sublet my apartment to, and here's the celebrity, Don Johnson.
Wow.
So if you know Don Johnson, you're in Tampa and everything. Don Johnson in the 80s, Miami Vice was the hottest show on TV. And he used to tell me that he used to walk down in a car in Wall Street after they won all these awards, the most popular show, and women used to throw their undergarments at him. Okay. And he comes in and he's charming and he says, well, this guy referred me. I have a dental burden. So he came in for a while. He knew how to, and we knew how to play it too. We weren't just treating a celebrity. He said, hey, can we use you? And he knew we were starting out and he let us take pictures of it. And back then we went from the pictures to, our website because there was nothing else there. And we leveraged the celebrity clientele. And from that, it kind of worked itself over the years to other celebrities, Jennifer
Incredible.
Hudson, Randy. These are people that will allow me to use their name
Yeah.
because we've been good to them and they've been good to us. We were available for them almost 24/7. They needed anything, we were there for them. So that was kind of like one of our first tipping points is getting somebody in there that was a name. And I remember this was the patient. He came in doing treatment and somebody's in the waiting room sees it. Well, if they're good enough for Don Johnson, they're good enough for us.
Well said. And like we talked about before the show, what I'm doing, my entrepreneurial endeavors, you have to work these hours in the beginning. You have to put yourself out there and go above and beyond while we can. We have to be able to put it out there. But in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of difficult parts as we battle. I'd love to hear what you find most challenging.
It's interesting in my early years because your brain and your vision is way ahead of it, but you have a team and you have a team that works in a dental office. And sometimes the best way, and you can see different businesses have different successes. There are some, let's talk about the NFL, you're wearing your jet shirt, right? Some coaches like Bill Parcells would get away, I believe he would get away from yelling and screaming. And then you have Bill Belichick that does it a different way.
Right.
I had found that I can't scream and yell at my staff, most of my staff members. It's just a turn off, they tune you away. So I think that I later learned when I went through some of my early team members that didn't stay with me because I was a hothead. I was able to get people and we kind of met the mark. I have my hygienist was with me now for 22 years, a dentist 23 years. And so we have grown and evolved to become part of each other's lives. One of my other great stories, I had somebody that came in here and we located her as believe it or not, she was a housekeeper. Okay. And she came in and Deb said, Dolores, you're pretty sharp, and she didn't have the benefits of going to a 4-year university. I kind of always sit back and realize I am very privileged to be here because my parents gave me a big head start of a lot of people. And there are people out there that just want an opportunity. So she comes in 17 years ago. Okay, no experience. She is my leading technical digital person. Like a lot of fields in medical, everything is moved towards digital. Okay, digital scans, 3D, digital x-rays, in-face visual. All the records are digitized with face simulation for things like
Incredible.
cosmetic, Invisalign, implants, and she has grown with us. So my big thing is not only finding the right people, but also learning how to develop them.
Incredible learning lesson right there. And I think that's something you have to just get with experience in the industry, being around people, like you said, finding something that didn't go the way you wanted it to. And now you have team members that are like family, as you're describing. And you described their great lesson learned. Was that your greatest lesson learned, or is there another failure or lesson learned you'd like to share?
I'm going to share with you some because we could paint the 30 and then mostly have been ups, but I've had some downs too. Okay. An obvious one is the hardest thing is learning who to do business with. Because in any business, there are people that you should not be doing business with, that the relationship is going to turn very negative. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you countless hours of anxiety, worrying, legal, everything. So I was always, that's one thing, is judging on who to do business with. Now, the good thing is, I think 99% of the population are very easy to deal with. It's those 1 or 2% that either have unrealistic expectations. They're looking to screw anybody they're in business with.
Yeah.
They're never happy. They have some emotional issues. So those are kind of things. But my business decision from a business is that because we had some early successes, I was approached about doing this educational company in the late 90s. And the person in charge was very persuasive. Right? And there are people out there that can talk you into doing anything. And when I finally realized 3 years later, and a few $100,000 invested in it, and mental hours that took away from my practice and my family, I realized this is nothing more than a Ponzi scheme. So, and again, looking back, I was pretty young, 38. A lot of life is about life experience. You can study and be the sharpest, have a huge intellect, but there's nothing like real life experience.
I agree.
And what that turned me into is that, when you have a failure, and that's my other thing, is you have to learn to accept your failures. And personally, life will beat the hell out of you. It's how you get up back on your feet. So after that, I was pretty beat up for a while. And then coincidentally, some of the people that were involved in that education system called me up. I remember the call in December of 2002. We're going back almost 20 years now.
Never forget it. Yeah.
Never forget it. And he says to me, I know you're in cosmetic dentistry, and there's something that's coming to the area I think would be interesting. He tells me it's orthodontics. And I said, just for a lot of orthodontics in dental school is generally less emphasized back then and even today because it's controlled by the orthodontist and they don't want GPs to do it. So I gave him a little look at him, and I said, okay, I'll go to it. It was an evening 2-hour program. And I remember because Paige and her two brothers were young. I asked Deb, we have anything planned? She goes, no. So I went to the meeting. I sat in the back. The guy from the speaking was from Atlanta. So I had the New York attitude. What is this guy from Atlanta going to teach me? I had my hands folded. And eventually I started to see, I think this had some potential. And that's how I got into Invisalign. So I started out shaky 2002, 2005. 3 years later, I was awarded the case shootout. We had to compete against our peers, and I was voted by my peers. And then I became an instructor, which the first time I spoke, my manager at the time said, he sucks. He'll last 6 months. And here I'm doing it 18 years later. So what one failure led into a success story. And then coincidentally, different company at the time, a company that started doing hand digital scanning in 2005. It was over in Jersey in Cadent. I was one of the beta testers. I was just I don't know if it was luck. My lab said, why don't you try this technology out? So 2005, I'm doing it. It's very, very pioneering, nothing like today. And then all of a sudden, 4 years later, because the number 2 person came to me as a patient and says to me, what do you think of this company called Cadent? I said, the technology is great, but the company is terrible. And then within a week, Invisalign, purchased them for $150 million. Okay. And what did I get from that? Not much, but I was part of something great. And it's great to be part of that. It's developing and changing people's lives. You see behind me smiles, there are 10 million people now that have gone through Invisalign.
It's a great testament to never go into a situation with a decision made. You went in that thinking the worst, right? And then you came out with Invisalign. So you never know what you're going to get out of a conversation. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing incredible learning lessons with those few answers. But as entrepreneurs, we always do have to learn, continue to have conversations. Who would you choose to have a conversation with, dead or alive, any entrepreneur?
So that's kind of an interesting question because I thought about it and I said, right away you look at, because I'm involved in technology, I think, okay, Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs didn't like his personal life, really turned me off, even though the company and the vision it changes how we work every day. Then I thought, I kind of was early. I mean, I was a fan of Tesla, but if I had to pick, but I said, it's still, but I had to pick one person right now who I would have a conversation with, it would be Andrew Carnegie. And the reason
Love it. Titan of
is,
industry.
yeah, Titan of industry, that time, technology, engineering, but yet a humanitarian that gave back through education, through culture,
Mhm.
and you see his name everywhere. And it's not, to me, if you're kind of in that crazy league, it's about what you leave the world with, and how do you leave the world a better place besides your company or technology. It's part of who you are.
You gotta think back then there was no Google, there was no ways to figure out. These guys had to do it from the start. But I want to delve a little deeper here, Stephen. Where would this meeting go down if you had to pick the chair? If you had the chance to pick?
Oh, it's interesting. I would probably stand right in front of Carnegie Hall, because I am definitely a fan of the arts. Theater, opera, music. I kind of like all those different medias, and so to be here and look back, this is all because of what your philanthropic efforts were to build something that's based upon your dream to build this huge company.
Absolutely. It would be great to meet any of the Titans, so I respect that choice. But now I want to look into the future a bit here, Stephen. What's next for Glassman Dental? Is there anything else in the works?
Again, we've become one of the first users of this technology called SmileFi. So for those people out there they're not ready to jump in to see what kind of cosmetic, what a new smile would be like for them, we're combining photos, 3D movements, and 3D scans so they can actually visualize, and not just a Photoshop. This is a full screening where you go through the outdoor, inside to the bone, the roots, the teeth positions,
Wow.
and really kind of plan that so it's predictable. At the end what you're getting. It's non-invasive. So we've kind of been doing that lecturing about it. I'm also here to help the industry, having taught my peers, because at this point, I think the quality of care that we provide around the world is important. And so some of the companies that I'm talking to is direct to consumer. There may be somebody that doesn't have, that wants a greater smile out there, and they're in Europe, in Africa, in China. If we can communicate to them directly or through their local dentist, that's something that I'm very interested in being a part of.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing everything else you and Deb are going to accomplish and now giving back to the next generation. It's going to be exciting to see. But believe it or not, for today's Spotlight story, everyone, we're going back even before his choice of entrepreneur. We're going back to the 1700s. And for your first time listening today, each episode, I share the entrepreneurial journey to inspire you, the listeners. I want to give you another set of stories to go by. And for today, since we have an all-star dentist on the show, we're going to look into another and a name that I did not know as a dentist, Paul Revere. And many of you have heard this name in history class, but he was a Boston patriot immortalized in Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's poem that described his midnight ride to warn the colonists about the British attack. As far as making money on his own, this is where dentistry came in. He placed an ad in the Boston Gazette in 1768 offering to replace lost front teeth with artificial ones. He had claimed he replaced hundreds of teeth in another ad 2 years later. He also boasted that he, quote, can fix them as well as any surgeon dentist who ever came from London, fixing them in such a manner that they're not only an ornament, but of real use in speaking and eating. So you could tell how times have changed, not just in dentistry, but the way we speak. The Stamp Act of 1765 had further depressed commerce in Boston, which led him to being 34, growing a family, and owing a lot of money. The creditors tried to attach his house, so he decided to hang out his shingle as a dentist, cleaning teeth and wiring into place false teeth made from ivory or animal teeth. He had learned this skill set from John Baker, a surgeon dentist who was living with a friend. Stephen, what's your takeaways from this story?
Well, I guess Paul Revere can be regarded as one of the first influencers out there.
Mhm.
He was not afraid to market his services, which, going back, the whole marketing of professional services was really looked down upon, but he didn't give a crap. This is what he's going to do to help his family, to revive his career. As far as aesthetics, we always say form follows function. So he was a true pioneer in that. And I think his logo could have been, or his advertisement, it could have been, the cavities are coming, the cavities are coming.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I like that. And I I look at this story as well. We are talking about direct mailing for you before the internet. Now we're going even further back where I can't imagine the population being too large at this point, but he's just hanging out a shingle outside. Come on in if you pass it. And
Good for him. It's very, very different, and that was one of our challenges being in a high rise building in New York City. You don't have that traffic volume where people walk by.
very
So
true.
good for him. A really humanitarian, changed history. Uh, Great to hear. I knew he was a dentist. I wasn't sure of all those little facts that you just filled me in. So that's a great story, Vinny.
Yeah, thank you. I try to have the stories resonate with my guests more so now, as there's been a few episodes that have gone by. In the beginning, I would just kind of pick one, and now I really try to make it where you can provide some value. But with that, I want to thank you, Stephen, so much for coming on. Ton of value. I loved, again, how we started with the direct mail. We talked about how to treat your employees, the learning lessons in that, and also gambling as an entrepreneur with Invisalign. Now look how far that has taken you. And it is now time for your last word.
So I would say most entrepreneurs are afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to take risks. Look at it. The most of the risks you take are very small. It's mostly trying something new, a different idea. Don't let your competition be talk you down of it. Try to do something that's uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone to do this. I remember one story, which we didn't discuss, is back about almost 10 years ago. This is when YouTube was going on. We did a video to the tune of "Love the Way You Lie" by Rihanna and Eminem, "Love Invisalign," and it took off and it had 300,000 views. And everybody was like, "What are they doing?" But it created a buzz. It created new patients, and it just shows. Don't be afraid to get into your comfort zone, and don't be afraid to take risks.
I love that last word. Can you please give everyone the opportunity to find you online, social media, your website, how to find all things Glassman Dental?
So we're you can direct message us on Instagram at Glassman Dental. Our website is glassmandentalcare.com. I'm Dr. Steven at Dr. Steven, DRSTVN Glassman on Instagram. So you can contact that in any of those manners.
Again, thank you so much for coming on. And everyone who's listening on to this episode, check out his content. If you're in the New York City area, please do reach out if you're in the need for some dental services. And while you're searching for his content, be sure to check us out too. We are that entrepreneur show across the board, except on Twitter, we're at Podcasts by Lancey. So you have updates from all 4 shows. My handles are at Vincent A. Lancey for all social media and YouTube. And my website is vincentalancey.com. And as always, we're going to wrap up with a quote. And this one is going to be from Paul Revere. I, on the opposite shore, will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm for the country folk to be up and to the arm. To translate this into entrepreneurship, be prepared for when an opportunity comes knocking. You don't want to let it pass by. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week on That Entrepreneur Show.